Well, through the magic of technology, Barbara and I have miraculously changed our clothes, and we are in separate spaces. Our masks are off because we are social distancing, and we are just delighted to welcome you all to this first virtual PLU homecoming. We're delighted that this virtual tour is kicking off a week of fun activities and ways for our larger Lute community to gather together and to celebrate this mission that we care about so much. I'm joined today in this panel conversation with Dean Barbara Haberman. Barbara is actually in the facility as we speak. That's not a virtual background. And Barbara, you're in one of the sim rooms, if I am correct. Is that right?
That is correct. I'm in one of the sim rooms up on the second floor. And I have a mom and baby. Mom and baby behind me.
Yeah. I'm also joined by President Alan Belton from his office on campus. And so the three of us will be your panelists for the remainder of this time. I believe you saw as you were joining some instructions for our time together today. Your phones and video have been muted and turned off, so worry not, you can't disrupt this webinar with any dog noises or other things in the background. However, the Q&A function, the question and answer function, is live, and so that's the best place for you to type questions. We received several in advance, and so we're going to organize ourselves responding to those questions, and then we'll take your live questions as we go here. And one question was already asked about how this will be shared afterwards. This video will be on our YouTube site, on our webpage, immediately following our time together today. So as we gather, I want to just take a moment to thank those folks who, many of whom are on this call today, who made this beautiful facility possible. I highlighted this at the beginning of the tour, but this building would not have been possible without the generosity of families and foundations in our larger Lute community. And Barbara and Alan and I have had the great pleasure of working with many of you as we dreamed about this concept and then saw it come to fruition. Alan, you said to me the other day that that might have been one of the best days of your presidency, was walking into this new facility.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know how anybody could watch that video, and I know it's not the same as being there, but not just be genuinely excited for our students and our faculty. It is, I will say that when I walked in for the first time to film a little video myself, I got teary-eyed because it is perhaps the nicest facility on our campus, and perhaps the nicest nursing facility at any institution, not only in the state of Washington, but in the country.
So as we jump in here, we've got several questions that were submitted ahead of time, and we'll kind of go in no particular order, but just starting with some that were shared ahead. And I'll direct this first question to you, Alan. How did this facility become a priority for PLU? Can you talk about where this idea came from and how we got here?
Sure. Well, I'd love to take credit for this facility becoming a reality based on my own, brilliance, but it absolutely has nothing to do with that. In fact, I think if you asked any nursing faculty member at PLU who's ever taught here and any nursing student who's ever attended and graduated from PLU, they know that our facilities do not match the quality of the faculty and the students. And so when I arrived here years ago, that was already a priority, and the campus, in a survey looking at how we might invest in our campus, the campus community had also raised that voice that nursing needed to be a priority. So we already were working on plans. In fact, I think before Barbara arrived, prior nursing dean, one of the things we did was to remodel parts of Ramstad. And so we invested some money and upgraded a skills lab. And at one point, a few years ago, when I was still the CFO here at PLU, we completed one project and we started talking about the next. And that was to build a new skills lab and Sims lab. And the architects told us you could do that, but Ramstad would collapse. So we decided that was not the best option. And in my role as CFO, I was also looking at what to do with a 15,000 square foot empty bookstore down the street. And it just so happened that the School of Nursing needed approximately 15,000 square feet. So whether it's brilliance or luck, I asked the question because PLU obviously is very focused on thoughtful inquiry. Well, what about this facility down the street? And we opened that question up to our nursing faculty They toured the facility, and it was really our faculty who came up with what that facility would look like and what it should include.
Thanks, Alan. I think that might be that's a wonderful segue. Barbara, one of the questions we received is, how does this facility fit into the greater plans for the PLU School of Nursing? How does this work in your overall approach to educating nurses?
So in the School of Nursing, a couple of years ago, we increased our enrollments, or we increased the size of our cohorts. But at the same time, we were very, very short on space. So really now this gives us the ability to really accommodate the number of students that we already are carrying in our cohorts. Is the potential there that we could increase at another point in time? Yes, that certainly is an area. But it really is, I think, for me, it provides both the students and the faculty with the type of facilities to really be doing what they need to do to be prepared to be practitioners.
Yeah, and Barbara's being modest. The School of Nursing has grown its enrollment by 40% in 5 years. So we needed this facility, as she said, to accommodate the students we currently have.
Shifting gears here a little bit and just talking about current students and what they're experiencing, we received a couple questions. Obviously, when Barbara and I filmed that tour, we were wearing masks. We see the students wearing masks and practicing distancing. How are we keeping students safe and still accomplishing clinicals and labs during this time of COVID, Barbara?
So we, midway through the spring semester, we went totally remote. And most of that was due to the fact that clinical agencies really had an extreme shortage of PPE, so that it would not be safe. Early in the summer, or July 1 really, we started holding some in-person labs and clinicals. Our summer student population is not all cohorts, so it was a smaller group, so it gave us the ability to really figure out how to do it in the most safe, effective manner. So now pretty much all of our clinicals are going, and all of our labs and sim labs are going. We are obviously, all students are masked at all times. Our students are socially distanced at all time. We have policies in place that there are 30 minutes down between each class period so that all areas are thoroughly cleaned down, et cetera. You may have noticed when the video first started that there were signs on the front door that showed ways to go. So we have traffic patterns in all buildings. You enter one way, exit another way. And so we put a lot of steps in place to ensure the safety of our students. Nursing is a profession where working with viruses and infections are things that we do as part of our daily practice. So our students, really have to be trained in those areas, and we're considered an essential workforce in the state. And so we need to be able to be conducting our business and preparing nurses for the workforce.
Mm-hmm. And it's my understanding that that's one of the reasons the facility was able to open almost on schedule. Is that right, Alan? This sense that we are this is essential work.
Yeah, it's the reason we were both able to complete the facility in time. It was also the reason that nursing was allowed to, in the summer, have clinicals and labs in person, because it is considered an essential training workforce.
So one of the questions I hear a lot when talking to folks about these, especially the high-tech simulation labs. My mother-in-law happens to be a graduate of the School of Nursing. My mother is also a retired nurse. And so I think often there's questions about, with these sim labs, Barbara, we talked about it a little bit on the video, with these high-tech simulation labs, are PLU nurses moving away from hands-on learning? Is that, are they still getting what some consider the hallmark of a PLU education, that hands-on practice? How do these new facilities like the one you're in fit into the curriculum and how we're teaching?
I would start with the statement that probably nothing replaces hands-on clinical. That being said, as I said in the video, there are certain situations that students just do not get those experiences. You cannot control that, guarantee that in the clinical agency. And that's across all different areas per se. So really, we try to use simulation to make sure some of those high-risk procedures are done in a safe manner, not on a real patient the first time. So that's a big use of simulation. I would actually say, because of our previous spaces being limited, we have probably less simulation in our curriculum than most schools of nursing do. So we are going to gradually, with this new facility, increase that amount, but we will still certainly stay far above what the state requires in terms of the number of clinical hours for students. So it will always be a clinical practice will always be a big, important hallmark for our programs.
Dan, you are on mute.
Thank you, Alan.
Welcome to Zoom.
Thank you for that, Barbara, and thank you for that, Alan, keeping me honest here as we go. A couple questions we received about just how the school has changed over the years, and then also where we see the school going in the years ahead. And so maybe that's kind of a two-part question. How has the school changed? I mean, and both of you are relatively new at PLU. But Barbara, even you arrived in July of 2019, and I know that you've done a lot of listening and a lot of meeting and a lot of partnership building already. As you see the school now and kind of where it's going, where do you see that evolving in the years ahead? How is this facility part of that?
So I think the school, it's interesting, the question, because I was rereading our 60th anniversary history book earlier this week. So it kind of did give me a good sense of the whole history of the school. I think we are in a period of time where we are undergoing a fair amount of change. As was alluded to earlier, we did grow fairly significantly in terms of our size of our traditional undergraduate cohorts. We also grew our entry-level master's cohorts. And, roughly about 5 years ago, we started our DNP programs. So I think now we are looking at all of our programs. We're undergoing major curricular revisions, which I can speak more to in a few minutes, possibly. But we're also looking at how to continue to grow our graduate programs. And looking at different tracks within potentially our DNP program. So those are some of the major ways we're changing. The other thing I would mention is we're also seriously looking at getting an accelerated BSN program going, hopefully in the next year or so. So a lot of curricular work, new program work, expansion of programs is really what's going on, at least in the last year and a half.
And Alan, how do you see that fitting into the future of PLU and some of the work we're doing here in the South Sound and
Sure.
region?
Well, I'll tell you, transitioning into the presidency and having an opportunity to provide at least some kind of leadership vision for PLU is really easy when you have a program like our School of Nursing. So, people may not be familiar, but we've just completed the development of a strategic plan. And part of that plan for PLU moving forward in the next 3 to 5 years is a pretty bold statement that we will be the premier institution in the region for nursing and health sciences. And so, this having the facilities match the quality of the program is just one step. Barbara and her team do an amazing job of partnering in the community, and I've taken it as a personal commitment as PLU's president to do the same. And so, just recently, Barbara and I and the Dean of Natural Sciences and a whole team from PLU went and met with one of our local health systems. And we didn't go there asking them for things. We went there and offered to them, tell us what PLU can do to be a leader in the healthcare community, in not just the South Sound, but in all of Western Washington. So where are the areas we can grow that will benefit the community? What are the programs that are missing, that are needed in the community? And really that's, I think, the next phase for PLU is to build off the strength of our premier, if not our single premier, one of our premier programs on this campus. And I think people on this call know that our nursing program is great, but our natural sciences programs are equally great, our pre-med, our social work, our marriage and family therapy. So all of these things that come together really stand out as a way to connect PLU to the community in a new, big, and bold way.
Thank you, Alan. that's a good transition. It's a wonderful transition to thinking about community broadly. One of the questions that came in, beyond serving PLU nursing students, does the facility create the capacity for PLU to host professional development or training for nurses or healthcare organizations throughout the Puget Sound or even in the state of Washington?
It most certainly does, yeah. I think in our planning, we saw it definitely as a way to outreach to the community and to bring in the community for different events and offerings. We, within the School of Nursing, have a relationship with the continuing education area in our university and are already have a fairly packed fall calendar, and some of those activities are occurring in this facility and will continue to occur in this facility. And I think the other thing is in our planning of the facility, we had in mind the notion of expanding health sciences at PLU. And so certainly what we have done here in terms of the simulation labs, et cetera, could be used by multiple other disciplines.
Yeah, it's worth noting too that in that planning, we had conversations with both Multicare and CHI, who are the two big networks here in the South Sound, and they both contributed to the facility. So, and I think part of that is the expectation that we will continue to partner in the community and bring folks in to the facility as best we can.
We received several questions about just the kind of student experience. Some kind of basic and probably just helpful to talk about, you know, how many students are in the School of Nursing today, and what does the student faculty ratio look like in nursing compared to other places on campus?
So we admit, in our traditional baccalaureate program, we admit twice a year, 48 students. And we have a pretty high retention rate. It was actually the highest it's been this past semester. We admit in our entry-level master's program once a year. We admit those during the summer. We admit 32 there. And then we also admit in our doctorate of nursing practice once a year, and that's also in the summer. And that varies how many we admit from anywhere from, I would say, probably in the range of 15 to 20. So we would like to grow that more so. So when you put it all together, we have over 400 students in various segments of the program.
And how does that, Alan, how does that compare to, you know, the other programs at PLU?
Yeah, you know, I'll admit, I don't know the student faculty ratio within nursing. I know that we have a very low student faculty ratio overall. And I suspect that what Barbara might share is that it will depend, right? So some of the larger courses are in nursing. And so in those particular class sections, you saw that really large classroom we added. That's because nursing really needed that. So in that case, you're gonna have a lot of students in one class. But we also have, I think, more nursing faculty than any other type of faculty on our campus. And so I think for the hands-on experience, the ratio is probably lower than the overall university ratio.
So just to add on to that, so yes, in our clinicals, we at the undergraduate level or pre-licensure level, we're a 1:8 ratio. In our labs, we're usually a 1:12 ratio. And then in our graduate level for our nurse practitioner students, where they're precepted, the faculty ratio in those areas is 1:6. So that's where, you know, we may have large didactic classes where you don't know each student as well. You certainly do at the laboratory and the clinical preceptor level.
And for reference, the university as a whole, the ratio is 12:1.
Thanks, Alan. Thank you, Barbara. How many hours a week are the students in the labs or in lab? Or how many total hours are PLU nursing students typically in their program? That was a question we received.
In our current program, they get well over 700 units. And I'm not giving a specific number because with COVID, you know, it's been a fluctuating number. But whereas the state requires that they only have to have 600 units. So we've always been rich on clinical hours. As we move into our new curriculum, which I think there may be some questions that come up about that, we will have, I was just looking at this right before I came in here, I believe it's 672. Don't quote me on that, but I believe that's the ballpark of the number. And in the state of Washington, you can, typically you can count simulation for clinical hours at a 1-to-1 ratio, though they're being a little more flexible in these COVID times. But yeah, so that's a little bit about clinical hours in the programs.
And what are the, how about just the student experience? I mean, what are the students saying, the current students that we have now, as they experience this new facility?
I think one of his best days of his presidential was seeing the facility. I think one of my best days was actually on the day, Dan, that we did the tour. Mm-hmm. And I came in a bit early and I was watching the students interact and watching them in the labs. And even though they were all masked, I couldn't see their smiles. I could see their smiles through their eyes. They were just so excited to be in the new facility. And so I think they've really enjoyed the amount of space and the modernness of it, the equipment, et cetera, all just being really state of the art. And we started simulation last week. And again, it's just in comparison to what they previously had. If they're continuing students, I think they're just in awe of what the capabilities are and thoroughly enjoying it. And I think that is true of faculty. I was up in Ramstead and then coming on down here this afternoon, and I ran into somebody in the parking lot, and she just talked for 10 minutes about how great this semester's been. So I think they're really appreciating the totality of the experience.
I ran into a student athlete in the field house while we were filming for a different virtual meeting, and one of the athletes was in the nursing program. I was asking the three of them what they do, and so I had the opportunity to ask, have you seen the new facility? And he said, seen it, OMG, it's the best thing ever. And I would have chosen PLU anyway because the program is great, but that facility shows me how much PLU cares about nursing. So that was rewarding. That was almost as good as seeing the facility, but not quite.
Just a couple of questions about kind of where, well, I'm going to call an audible here. I'm going to go back to curriculum and then we'll talk about moving forward. Barbara, you've mentioned curricular revision a couple times. I wonder if you could say a bit more about that. Where are we headed with our curriculum? And what things are we looking at to, kind of meet the need and expand capacity?
So the curriculum we have that we're going to begin phasing out, and I can come back to that in a second, has been the curriculum for about 20 years. And much has changed in healthcare in 20 years, including one of the areas that's changed a lot, not nationwide, but also very much so in the state of Washington, is actually where nurses are working, i.e., if you looked 20 years ago, probably 90% of nurses would have been working in acute care. When you look today, meaning looking at 2019 data, about 56% of nurses work in acute care hospitals. So that means that they're working in long-term care, they're working in ambulatory care, primary care, home health, hospice, outpatient community settings. And so our move to revise the curriculum was really to better prepare students for the workforce they're going to be entering. Not only where their first job is per se, but really what their career is going to look like. So we are moving, we had in the traditional curriculum, a 6-semester program. And so what that meant was they did their science courses in year 1, a few general ed requirements, and they entered into nursing when they were still doing a lot of their science, still doing science concurrently with it. And other issues has just really made it challenging because scheduling was challenging. Scheduling of clinicals when you have students that are taking a PE class and 2 general ed classes along with their nursing classes is really challenging. So we did the curricular revision really looking more to prepare for the workforce, but in the same time, it gave us some gains. And that, is students will take all their science courses spread over 2 years. So instead of having to come in and take 2 concurrent science courses in their first semester when they're trying to get used to being away from home, being at college. They can spread those out over the 2 years, and they can also spread out their general ed requirements over the 2 years, so that when they enter the nursing program, then they are purely for those 4 semesters in nursing, only taking nursing courses. And it really, because of that, it also then frees up the scheduling issues, because we've had particular courses where we can only have them do clinicals 2 days of a week because the rest of the time they're in other courses. Whereas now we really will kind of have that 5-day-a-week calendar that we can work with. So I think it gives more flexibility, but I actually think it really will help with our intent to major people in nursing, be able to get through those science courses spread a little bit better over time. So that's really where we're going to that. So we have admitted our last, this semester, we admitted our last 6th semester curriculum student. And now from now on, we'll be admitting for the 4 semesters.
And just at the high level, in terms of who's using this space, is this space used only by undergraduate students? Because I think most folks know this, but PLU launched our our DNP program, our doctoral program a couple years ago, and of course the master's program. So
we will, the DNP students will use this space ultimately for smaller seminars and things of that nature. We are slowly moving over the procedures courses that they do at the DNP level. We'll be moving those over and health assessment with time.
I think this question is for both of you, and it's really about the larger landscape of healthcare. Barbara, you referenced it in terms of the shifting placement of where our graduates are going. What is the kind of the 10-year outlook for healthcare in the Pacific Northwest look like? Maybe Alan, we'll start with you, and Barbara, I'd love to hear you comment as well. So what does that look like, and how is this facility and our program responding to what we're seeing?
Yeah, well, and Barbara will have much more detail, I'm sure, but I will tell you, it speaks directly, it's a great question because it speaks directly to why we're out talking to the community about need. And so when we went down the path a couple of years ago toward working on fundraising for this facility and making it a reality, one of the things we were looking at was a pretty general consensus that in the state of Washington alone, in the next 3 to 5 years, we would have a shortage of about 8,000 nurses. And that put Washington per capita right at the top of the country. We were in the top 5 in terms of potential nursing shortage. And frankly, if every school who currently has a nursing program expanded the way PLU did and has in the last 5 years, we would still have a nursing shortage. So where we hope to really contribute is to not just grow the numbers, but to fill in, as I mentioned earlier, the holes that are out there. So you heard Barbara talk about psych mental health. We heard pretty clearly from our partners in the community that behavioral health, psych mental health is a real gap area, particularly in the South Sound. And there are a number of other areas where we can fill those gaps. But yeah, the nursing shortage is very real. And I don't know if it's been asked, but I will say that there is an aging of the nursing population. And COVID isn't helping, because I think it's forcing a lot of folks in the profession to really think about, is now the time to move on and get out. And then we have the task of filling them in on the other end. So I would predict that the gap is going to be bigger than we anticipate.
I totally agree. I think that is the case. In the state of Washington, we roughly put out about 1,000 registered nurses per year. And so it is no way close to what the need is. And as Alan alluded to, if you look at the data in Washington, it is definitely an aging nursing workforce. So that's why we really are looking at partnerships and moving forward with different types of programs so that we can help. We can't address it totally on our own by any means, but at least we can contribute to our most that we can do.
We should all be very proud of the fact that PLU is, numbers are important. PLU is one of the top 3 producers of nurses in the state of Washington. And I don't think anybody in their right mind could argue that our nurses that we produce aren't the best. So number 1 in terms of quality.
What about the question of kind of what distinguishes, in your minds, and I'd love to ask you both to answer this, as we think about this facility and our graduates, what distinguishes a graduate of the PLU School of Nursing from any other school in the state? And you might each have your own way of answering that. Barbara, do you want to start?
I'm in right away. I really think it's the Liberal Arts Foundation.
Mm-hmm.
I think it really makes a really strong foundation for a nurse, and I think gives a solid contribution to them being an ethical practitioner that is out there to serve others.
Yeah. And so I've seen that on the other end. So prior to coming to PLU, I was in corporate banking, and in my role, I spent a lot of time on boards, and one of the boards I was actively engaged in was a local healthcare system. And as part of that role, we did a tour of the major hospital in Tacoma within that system with the head of nursing. And one of the conversations we had was about the lack of nurses, so the shortage that we're talking about now. And I asked the question, because I knew no better, well, where do you find your nurses and where do you find the best nurses? And again, this is prior to me not only being PLU's president, but prior to me being associated with PLU in any other way than being married to an alum. The head of nursing said, and I will paraphrase, we get the vast majority of our nurses from the region, most of them from PLU, because when we see PLU on our nurse's resume, we know we're going to get a skilled, caring nurse. And I think that reflects what Barbara is saying, is that it's the professional schools here at PLU, like the nursing program, with the, built on the basis of a quality liberal arts education.
We had just a couple of questions about just some more logistical things. I think that the tour did a good job of highlighting most parts of the facility, but if we could, and I'll ask you each you can take a turn. So Alan, as we walk into that facility, what's on the first floor of the facility broadly? And then Barbara, I'll ask you to answer what's on that second floor as you describe it. Mm-hmm.
Sure. So what you saw in the video is you did not see Dan and Barbara walking down the stairs from the second floor. So when you saw that beautiful skills lab that split into two and had the hospital beds that with the walls that were completely active and everything looked like you were in a really high-end hospital acute care facility, that is on the first floor. So when you come in, you're going to see kind of a gathering space, what used to be that really tall lobby. And there's a student fireside room where students can gather. There's the big skills lab with all the beds that can be split into two, including those on desks. But there's also really great bathroom facilities, laundry facilities, I think storage facilities. And if I'm not mistaken, Barbara, there's even one small classroom off of the skills lab, or am I remembering? Oh, it's storage now. So it's medical storage. Yeah. So again, it's all made to look and feel like the experience a student will have when they graduate and they go out into the real world as a nurse.
Yeah, Barbara even told me that there's in the headboard behind you in the functional, there's medical air in the pipes, so that those headboards are actually plumbed for dispensing materials, so to simulate again the setting. Barbara, what's on the second floor as you describe that space?
So there's, when you go up the staircase, and there's also an elevator in the back of the building that people can take up. But going up the staircase, you come to an open area where students can there's the lounge on the first floor, but there's additional space for students to sit, work on things, etc. And then as you walk down the hall, immediately on your right is that large classroom that we were in, the 96-seater. And then on your left is one of the simulation centers. And behind the simulation center, there's also a large storage room too. And the doors to that are wide enough that if we wanted to take that from looking like a hospital unit and make it into more of a home health type thing, we have the ability to move furniture in and out in order to do that. And so that's why the doors and the storage. As you go around the corner, there is, well, somewhere in there's restrooms, because I used them for the first time today. And so those are back in the corner there too. And then there's a lactation room. So we built a lactation room in this building because we are not all female, but we are largely a number of females. And so there is a separate space that you can lock and refrigerator, sink, all those things you need. And then you come upon another classroom on one side, and then on the other side, the second simulation suite. If you go back around the corner again, the one thing we didn't show on the tour, there's a couple offices back there, but there is actually a break room, we're calling it, but it is a place where staff and faculty could have lunch, but there's also some touchdown, 6 or 8 different touchdown workstations back there. So predominantly, there's not a lot of office space in this building. It really was built with the intent to be used by students. But we have faculty that maybe teach part of the day in Ramstead or will be teaching remotely on Zoom and then coming here. And so that they have places that they can touch down and do work here, check emails and things of that nature.
And Dan, there's 2 aesthetic features that we didn't talk about that I need to share. One is the first floor has a door that connects to the 208 cafe, which is fantastic for our students and faculty. The other is, and we didn't capture it on the video, but from the upstairs, I believe from both the classroom and from the landing, beautiful view of Mount Rainier when the mountain is out.
Yeah, there is from the landing. The day we did the walking tour, it wasn't out.
Okay.
What you expect to see here in Tacoma. That's great. Right. Just a couple additional questions. We received a couple about how, in addition to the facility, and Barbara, this is probably more for you, in addition to this facility, how we're encouraging student interaction with experts in the community, in local hospitals, how we're integrating community experts into that curriculum. There's some examples of, I think it's some former students commenting on both strengths and challenges of the program they saw in the 90s and into the 2000s.
Yeah, we're at a really good spot that with the new curriculum, we have opportunities to really develop things. And I'll give just a concrete example. And I think it's an example you're probably aware of, Dan, but one of the areas where I felt, and I think not just for PLU, but I really think this pertains to schools of nursing across the country, and there's actual survey data that would support that statement, is there are areas that we don't do as well as it needs to be done. And that is true in nursing education, it's true in medical education and other health professionals education. And one of those areas, for example, is the whole area of transgender health. Most schools of nursing have maybe 2 hours in their entire curriculum. So how do you really train someone in that very short period of time to be a gender-sensitive, gender-affirming person? My response is you really can't do it. You need that woven throughout your curriculum in many courses. So we actually, that's an area we're working with. We have a donor who contributed to that area, which will include buying some simulation equipment relative to that area, but it's also going to serve, who is an alumni, who is a nurse, who is also going to serve as a curriculum consultant for us in that area. So that's just one really concrete example that it was time for our curriculum to change and time for our curriculum to get more community-based. And that's really where we're going in terms of that we really want a balanced curriculum and building towards having half of our clinical experience be community-based experiences.
Thank you, Barbara. Are there any questions that I didn't ask either of you that you wanted me to ask you in this town hall? And I'll
yeah, I don't know that there are any questions missing. I do think in adding to what Barbara just shared, because I think it was really eloquent. I think the leadership, the importance of nursing, the importance of the experience of our students, which that questioner brought up, starts at the top. And so it's not just, it's not all on Barbara's shoulders, it's not all on the faculty's shoulders. And it's very important to me. I think more than words can express. And in fact, one of the meetings I have this week is with the board of a local healthcare system, because they've invited me to join their board. And part of that invitation is solely not, it's not about me, it's about the reputation of our program, but more importantly, it's about how we walk hand in hand with partners in the community. And the more we do that, and the more we demonstrate that we are here to be an integral part of the community and a leader in the community, the more opportunities our students will have. So I'm all in on the nursing program.
Thank you, Alan. With that, we are getting close to the end of our time, and so I want to just turn to you to see if you have any closing comments, and then I'll provide a little commercial here at the end. But Barbara, do you want to say anything as we close out today?
I would just, a couple things. I would say if for some reason our time is limited, so if a question didn't get answered, I will get back to those questions and try to answer those questions. But I think it's been fun doing this virtually. We felt very strongly that we wanted to have this facility open and be seen, particularly by our alumni and our donors. And we very much look forward to the time where we can actually do a ribbon cutting ceremony and welcome members of the community and the alumni to the facility.
Yeah, I'd echo that. And I think video doesn't do it justice. You two both did a fantastic job of walking the facility and sharing images, but you need to see it in person. And would echo Barbara's thanks. The fact that you're on a Zoom call, I know at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, when you could be out doing other things, shows that you're committed to PLU nursing and you're interested in its success. And so thank you for that. And I will share with you what I do with students when I have an opportunity to meet with students and families. And along the same thing that Barbara said, if you didn't get a question answered, or if you didn't think of it and you think of it later, or if you just want to chat, you can reach out to me. So you can send an email to president@plu.edu and I will respond. And if you want to find a time to meet, I'm happy to phone call, Zoom, or socially distance here in Howgie anytime. And thanks again.
Thank you, Alan, and thank you, Barbara. And thank you all for joining us. This was our first kind of kickoff event for homecoming week. We have lots of other fun things happening, so please look at the website for those events. The video that we shared will be posted there, as I mentioned. And as we end today, I want to again just say thank you. This facility would not have been possible without some very generous families and foundations, community partners. So it's truly a community effort. And to Barbara's point, we are all very excited to have an actual ribbon cutting once we can all get together. So until then, have a wonderful week. Lutz, we'll talk soon.
Thanks, everyone.